Welcome to Simply Made Homestead. Well, we are back in the kitchen, and today I am bringing to you a sourdough starter tutorial. We'll do this together. That's right. So if you've wanted to learn how to make sourdough, you have come to the right place, because we are going to start from the very beginning, from where we get our starter, how we make it ourselves, and right on into making bread, making bagels, making cinnamon rolls. That's right, lots of good stuff to come, so don't miss out. Now, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, you may want to do that right now. It would be a really good time. Hit that subscribe button and ring that bell for notifications so you won't miss any of the upcoming videos. First of all, I just want to tell you that I have never worked in a bakery. I am self-taught, but I can tell you this. We have taken my bread to lots of farmers markets, and it sells. It is the first thing to go out of everything in our tent. It is gone. First 2 hours, it is out of here, and it doesn't matter how many loaves I take. In this tutorial, I'm going to take you along each day, so it will be a daily process. On day one, which we will do today, we will not come back to this process for 24 hours. Okay, and then after that, it will be every 12 hours. We're going to have to babysit our yeast to get it growing, to feed it. So this is very important. Make sure you set a timer on Alexa. Make sure you set a timer on your phone. Whatever you need to do to be sure and remember to... Oh, okay. So it's very important to come back at the right time to your starter to be able to feed it, because that's how we're going to make it grow and make it build and make that bread rise and just have all those lovely little sourdough holes in the bread, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. To get started, make sure you pick a time of day that you're going to be able to come back to on a regular basis. Okay, so if you start at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m., make sure you can come back at 8 or 9 a.m. in the evening, and every day through this process. Now, this only takes 4 or 5 days to get your starter going, and so it's not something you're going to have to, commit to forever. This is just to build our starter. Now, after that, we'll talk about that later on. There is a way to put it aside and not have to do that every day. For day one, the first thing you will need a scale. Okay, now I use just painter's tape for labeling all the time, because we're going to need some kind of tape, a little piece of tape. A sticky note works great too. You'll need a quart mason jar. Wide mouth is much easier to stir your starter up in and get it going. You will need a spatula, and you will need a piece of fabric, cheesecloth, and a rubber band. And what we're going to do with this is we will put this over the top like that and put this around here once we get our starter made. And that allows any kind of dust or little buggies or whatever may happen along, stray hair floating through the air from your pet, from getting in your starter. And it also allows that air, because it needs that air to build and grow all that lovely yeast. So now, for your flours, this is one thing I had to learn the hard way. Make sure your flours and your water is all the same temperature. About 70-75 degrees is a really good temperature, but I just make sure they're all room temperature. If your water, I would use a filtered water. Now, we use the Berkey, and we love this. We absolutely love this system. I will provide a link below to it if you would like to check it out. So I always use my Berkey water because it sits on the counter. It's at room temperature at all times. This is just another little helpful tip. When I first started, I ran around looking for rye flour. Now, fortunately, I never found it at Walmart, ever. Never. They have all kinds of other kinds of flours under the sun, but not rye. So I found it at Publix, but not all Publixes carry it. So I had to like hunt it down. And it was like this little tiny bag for like $4 or $5 for rye. So I found this on Azure. Now you do have to grind it yourself. And when you make bread on a regular basis, you really go through it in a hurry. So I started buying it in bulk. And as you can see, it comes in the grains like that. I also purchased a flour mill so that I could grind my own rye flour, which you see here. Now, this is something that many bread makers, if you really love bread and want it as fresh as you can get it, because you can with your flours. Now, I do use King Arthur all-purpose and King Arthur bread flour. They have it in organic in both. But if you want a really good loaf of bread, you really do, it is very important to get a good quality flour. I just want to show you real quick how this thing works in case this is something that interests you. I love this flour mill right here. It's the Wonder Mill, and it's not too expensive. You could get a manual one a lot cheaper, but this is the one that I chose because we do, and I buy corn. I buy rye and corn, are just two of the things out of the many things, rice and all kind of things I buy in bulk at Azure Standard, and I'll leave a link to them as well below. It is amazing. It is crazy the price difference in like this huge bag of rye for a very small amount of money compared to a little bag that's not even a pound for $4 and $5 of rye. So huge difference. But anyway, I just want to show you how this works real quick. This right here, stick that right in there like that. Make sure this lid is on super good. If there's even a crack, it will go flying out that way. Now, this does get a little loud, so y'all may want to turn your TVs down for just a second. And it has different settings. It has for pastry, bread, and coarse right here. So, like for cornbread, I'll put my corn on coarse. But the first thing you need to do is to be sure and turn it on. If you pour this in here first and then you turn it on, it could clog up, and then you've got a mess. It will have to be taken apart. So this is really important. Make sure you turn your meal on first before adding your grain. Okay. Remember, it's going to be a little loud until I get the grain in there. Now, at the end of the process, when it has finished grinding, make sure you leave it on for just like several more seconds to make sure there's no loose little grain stuck up somewhere that's still waiting to fall through. Because like I said, you don't want that to sit there and let a grain of anything get stuck in there, and then you got a mess. So just make sure you turn it on, let it run, add your stuff, and then run a little bit once everything has gone through. Another thing I learned, well, this was not really another thing. This is part of the everything being the same temperature thing. Because when you first grind your flour, now all of this did not come out of that that I just poured in there. I had ground up some earlier for today. But when you feel it, it's hot. There's a lot of friction and all going on in there. Makes it really hot. So make sure if you have your own grinder and you plan to grind your grain, to let it sit for a little while and get to be room temperature before you try to use it. All right, let's set this to the side. All right, now, one more thing before we get started, and then we are on to the starter. It is so fast and easy, you'll be out of here. But first, you will need these little baskets. I think they're called baton or batoon, I don't know, I don't remember. But anyway, these little baskets right here. You will need some of these baskets for your bread, because each week I will be bringing a new tutorial to you on sourdough. So this week it's sourdough starter. Next week we are going to be making our own loaf of sourdough bread. So this right here, you will need these. They come in a set of 2, and you'll need a bread lane. which this is, it's a razor blade on a stick, but it's arched just right where you can cut it. And yeah, and you have to give a little opening on your sourdough so that it can expand and open up, and all that air just releases and just creates that beautiful, amazing loaf. I will leave links below to the bread line and the basket so that you can be prepared for next week. Take your scale, make sure you hit the unit button. So you have pounds, grams, we want grams. So take it there, take your quart-sized mason jar, sit it on there, and you see mine is 416 grams. So we will hit the tare button, 16, 17. We're gonna hit the tare button and we're going to zero it out. Now, before we move on, I'm going to take my tape and I'm going to write 416 pounds, or grams, sorry. 400, I'm just gonna put 416 on my tape, okay? Now stick that to the side, we're gonna use that later. All right, so now we're going to hit the tare button to zero out the jar again. And we're going to add 100 grams of filtered water. Make sure it is filtered water. Now, it is very important to use rye because it just has properties in there that really helps your helps everything grow and ferment and all that lovely goodness. Once again, we're going to clear our scale and we're going to add 50 grams of all-purpose flour. So the next thing we'll do is just mix it all around. We have 100 grams of water, 50 grams of rye, and 50 grams of all-purpose flour. And we'll just mix it all around really good to get everything incorporated. Take your spatula, this is why a spatula is the best tool here, and scrape down the sides. Just kind of smooth your top down as best you can. We'll take our little piece of fabric, put it over the top of your jar. And this is just one of those rubber bands off of produce from the grocery store. I throw those in the drawer and save them. They work beautifully. I put that around the fabric just to hold it into place. Take my tape and you put it, the top part of the tape, right along the top edge of your starter. So right there we have our jar, how much our jar weighed, because tomorrow we are going to take this jar and we'll put it back on the scale and we're going to take from and add to. So that is why that tape and that weight is very important. So don't skip that step. So now what we need to do is put it in a cabinet. I like to use like a cabinet right here beside my stove. I don't like to use one over my stove because it's like the heat rises right off the stove. I just feel like that's just way too hot. But it does need to be put in a nice warm place. But so I like this because it's still close to the stove. There's lots of heat, but it's nice and warm and cozy. We want it nice and warm and cozy so that beautiful yeast can grow and build. And in 24 hours, set your clock, 24 hours, I'll be back. Here we are, 24 hours has passed. You will need your scale, your starter, all-purpose flour, and rye flour. So you can see here, this is my starter. It has risen quite a bit. Now, I have made this starter, when I first made it, it did not do this. I think because it's midsummer, even though we have air conditioning in the house, that it just still, the humidity level and everything, it did make it rise higher. If yours has not risen at all, don't be upset about it. Look at the bottom. If there are even 1 or 2 bubbles down there, then you are good. You are good to go. Don't trash it. If you have not even 1 bubble, then you need to throw it out and start over. But if you even have 1 bubble, don't throw it out. Go ahead and let's go to the next step. So what we're going to do, we have our scale, we have our starter, and we know here mine is 416 grams is the weight of my jar. So we're going to keep 75 grams of the starter. Right. Now you can see here that my scale is reading 612 grams. That's with the jar and however much starter is in there, and it has grown, and we need 491. That is the weight of the jar, 416 plus 75 grams. So we are going to pull some starter out, and we can just throw it away until we get to 491 grams. All right, so that's 485, so I need to add a little bit back. Oh, 491. So I'm going to hit the tare button, bring it back to 0, and I'm going to add 75 grams. We have 75 grams of starter in here. I'm going to add 75 grams of room temperature water. So we're going to clear it out again, just like that, and we're going to add 50 grams of all-purpose flour. I like to do it with a spoon, just a little bit at a time, and that way, see, I got a little extra, so I can just pull it out. So we have 50 grams of flour. We're going to hit the tare button again and 0 it out, and add 25 grams of rye. So we'll just take our spatula and we'll stir it all around again. All right, so we're going to cover it up again with our little piece of fabric. All right, so in 12 hours from now, whatever your time period is, so we're going to be working on it every 12 hours for the next few days. So whatever time it is now, in 12 hours from now, we're going to come back and we're going to do this process again. Here we are, day 2, or 9 p.m. feeding. 12 hours has passed, and you can see how much mine has risen. Now, if yours has not risen as much, once again, do not be discouraged. If it has risen at all, if it hasn't risen at all, but you've got lots of bubbles and things, you're still good. It's still working, and it's still doing what it's supposed to do. It will grow, okay? So don't be discouraged. All right, so once again, we have our scale here. My jar weighs 416 pounds. We're at 637, so we need to remove it down to 491. We will clear my scale. I have a hard time getting it right on it sometimes, so that's why I am going with the 492, but try to get it right on as much as you can. So I'm going to hit the tare button, 0 it out, and we're going to add 75 grams of water, filtered water from my Berkey. There we go. All right, now let's go ahead and stir it around. We've got a lot going on in there. Things are stuck to the sides. It has risen and fallen and done what our sourdough starter needs to do. So let's just kind of get that all mixed up, kind of clean up our jar a bit. Hit your tare button once again, and we're going to add 50 grams of all-purpose flour, good flour. Make sure you do not use cheap flour, because during COVID, when it was really, really hard to find flour, I tried the cheap stuff because I was out, and it was awful. It really was. I was really surprised at what a huge difference that it was. See, this thing, my old one, I could get it precise, my old scale, but this one is just a little finicky, a little bit of a pain, but that's okay. All right, so we're going to hit the tare button again, and we're going to add 25 grams of rye. And once again, stir it all around. Get it well mixed, just like that. All right, and then we scrape down the sides, level it out in the jar, add our fabric back to the top, a rubber band to hold it down, or whatever you're using. And you can see, once again, it's pretty much at the same place. So there we go. And I'm gonna stick it back in the cabinet, and 12 more hours at 9 a.m. we'll be back on day 3 and do this exact process again. And you can see where my starter is. It has grown. It hasn't doubled, but it has grown. When I lean it back like that, I'm sorry guys, it starts flowing back, but you can see where the mark is. So we're going to go through the same process. We'll weigh our starter. We know I need 491, so I'm going to remove enough starter to bring it down to 491. And there we go. All right, we'll clear the tare and add 75 grams of water. Now let's just stir it around, mix it around, moisten our sides, kind of scrape everything around, and add 50 grams of all-purpose flour. Clear the tare, and we'll add 25 grams of rye. Mix this around. It still can be a little chunky looking, that's fine. It really is. It doesn't have to be smooth or anything like that. Flatten it out. Check your tape. See? Mine's right where it needs to be. Okay. And then we're going to put our cloth back on, our rubber band around it, and back into the cabinet it goes. All right, well, here we are. I have taken you through day 1, day 2, and day 3 to show you exactly what you need to do at 9 a.m. and then again at 9 p.m. If 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. works better for you, or 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. works better for you, whatever time works best for you is fine. Just pick a time of day that you could be able to get to your starter twice a day. So 9 and 9 is what works for me. We've done day 1 where we made it. We waited a whole 24 hours before we moved on, and we started our process of every 12 hours. And I showed you exactly how to do it and how much water and flour to put in there, so I'm not going to go back over that again. I didn't continue showing each one because it was just felt like it was getting a little monotonous, and I didn't want to bore you to tears, because day 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever is the same as day 2 and 3. You will feed your starter every morning and every night with 75 grams of starter, 75 grams of water, 50 grams of flour, and 25 grams of rye. Okay, now, once your starter, now it usually happens on day 4. So once your starter doubles in size within an 8-hour period, so like if you do it at 9, go set your little alarm at 5 p.m., go check on it, and if it has doubled in size, you see my tape, if it has doubled in size, then it is time to start feeding it just white flour. You omit the rye and you continue on to the every 12-hour feeding, but all you'll use is the flour. Now this is day 5 for me. I just started it on the flour yesterday, and you see how much it's grown. Now once it has doubled in size within 8 hours, it is ready to make bread. Typically it takes 5 to 7 days to get your starter where you want it to be. It really depends, one of those tips I told you about, really depends on the time of year. Like right now it is summertime here, and mine, even the first day, it rose really crazy. And there's air conditioning in the house, but still, it's just that the house is warmer than it is in the wintertime. So if you're watching this video and it's cooler weather where you are, don't be discouraged if it takes several days for your starter to start showing some signs. On day 1, you may have like next to nothing, but a bubble or two at the bottom. You're still golden, okay? Don't be discouraged, keep moving forward. On day 4, sometimes it acts a little dead, and sometimes it gets all big and fluffy. It may take you to day 5 to 7 before you get to the point where you start feeding it all purpose. So you just watch your starter, keep feeding it just like you're supposed to, and you will get there. No fear. All right, so now that mine has doubled in size, it is time to make bread. And I cannot wait to show you just how easy it is. So get your supplies in hand and be ready, because next Thursday we are going to make a loaf of sourdough bread. Oh, I'm so excited. So check out the links in the description box below. Our recipe will make 2 loaves. So I am attaching a link that it has 2 baskets, not the one, and so that way you'll have what you need and you'll be ready. The one thing that I can advise you to get as well is a little rice flour, because we will dust the outside of the bread with rice flour. So if you can pick up some of that before next week, so you'll be ready to roll, that would be really great. All right, guys, now if you have any questions or comments, please be sure and leave them in the comment section below. I love to hear from you, and I'll do everything I can to be able to help you along the way. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do that now and give us a big old thumbs up, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss it when the new videos come out. So until next time, take care and God bless. You can't say your name.
Timer for how long?
Never mind, Alexa. Thank you. So,